Right. Hey Ed, how are you?
I'm good, Michael. How are you?
Good. Sorry, everybody. We had a little bit of delay on starting things, but we are here. And Ed, thank you for joining me on this New Year Reconciled Live show. Happy New Year to everybody that's watching, and look forward to this conversation. I'm on here with Edward Kim or Ed Kim, and kicking off the new year with our first Reconciled live show here on the social channels. So thanks, Ed, for jumping on board. First of all, happy New Year to you, and would love to hear what did you do for your New Year celebration.
New Year's celebration. You know what? Many years ago, New Year's was like a big thing. This year, it was. I went to sleep at around 10:30 or 11. For those who don't know, I have a 20-month-old at home, and so we put him down around 8, and then ever since he was born, it's kind of taken on a different shape and form, and so I was the grumpy old guy that was awake this New Year's because somebody was putting fireworks in the neighborhood, and I was like, "Who's doing that?" And like looking out the window, checking all the cameras, being like, "Someone's got to stop." So didn't do a whole lot, but you know, uh, was a good time of reflection and spending some time with family when we were awake. So kind of low key.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, yeah. You have one young kid at home.
That's
That
right.
yeah, that's great.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's something. Yeah. Usually, I same as you. Ever since having kids, I usually will be home with the fam. We'll probably we'll watch the New Year's ball drop. If we're on, depending on what time zone we're in, sometimes we'll
Sure.
watch we'll watch China or the UK or somebody celebrate their New Year's, and then we'll go to bed around 9, 10 o'clock at night. This year I decided to go out, meet up a friend, and after the family went to bed, and so that was fun. That was fun to be out and to celebrate. And I felt like it was a little bit of an uneventful midnight click, but it's
Mm.
totally fine. Yeah.
You know what? I look forward to just being able to see friends on New Year's and for other kind of events also, right? To just have a little bit more flexibility to leave the house here
Yeah,
and there. So yeah, no, things to look forward to.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Ed, thank you for joining us. And you're the first show of 2000. You're the first guest for 2024, and looking forward to hear from you. I'd love to start off with just kind of for people who don't know you and people who haven't aren't connected with you on LinkedIn or
Mhm.
haven't heard about you. I would love to um, just for you to share a little bit about your background, kind of where you grew up, where you went to school,
Yeah.
and how you kind of journeyed yourself into what you're doing today.
Yeah. So I grew up in New Jersey, born and raised here. And then I went off to school at UMass and I studied sport management, thinking that, you know what, I love sports and I view the world around me through a lens of sports. And so I studied that. I loved studying it, but the industry it was never a fit for me. I never
Mhm.
found a spot. And I got any old random job right after college. I landed in customer service, which hindsight was a blessing in disguise because it taught me some things and it made me humble from the get-go versus a brash 22-year-old
Mhm.
thinking that he deserves everything, right? I started from the ground up, supporting, um, dealing with people's hard questions, complaints, X, Y, and Z, and I think that really built up a certain sort of foundation in me. But one of the big things for me as I was in my first job was every day at lunchtime we'd gather together as coworkers and um, there were complaints, right? We'd
Mm.
complain about benefits or we'd complain about lack of training and development, lack of career pathing. Sometimes it was my manager wasn't leading me in the ways that I needed, wasn't understanding me. And so I sat there as a 22, 23-year old every day for lunch and I was thinking to myself, if I do this right, I have about 42, 43 more years of sitting around at lunch tables complaining about the workplace before I could retire. And I despised that thought.
Mm.
I despised that thought. And I said, I don't have the stomach to do that. And I frankly don't think other people should have the stomach to do that, even if they can, right? Like
Mhm.
the workplace should not be such a source of complaint and such a place where your entire battery gets drained.
Yep.
And so, I read some books and things like that. And where I landed was I need to go back to school. I want to go back to school. And I had never felt that in my life, right? Like
Wow.
I thought I was the guy who like was going to go to college, come back home and, you know, work a 9 to 5 and have some beers with his friends after work and, call it a night and, rinse and repeat, right? This is the first time in my life where I felt passionate about something. And so I applied to go back to school at Columbia Teachers College and enrolled in a master's program for social organizational psychology. And I loved it. I loved it. Like my education gave me language to begin to express all that I had felt, but didn't know how to put into words. Right. And so that led to a career in corporate human resources. And corporate human resources, I think, is an extremely valuable function.
Mhm.
I also think it's one that constantly can't get out of its own way. And that's not to say that everybody's this way, but just so many of the experiences that I've had is HR can't get out of its own way in the sense that it espouses such great things, necessary things, but when you see how they're enacted in companies and organizations, it's not aligned. It's not
Yeah.
it's not doing the things that it's supposed to be doing. It's not playing the role for the employees. It's oftentimes an extension of risk management, at least in terms
Yeah.
of felt experience from people, right? And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be, but it it can be both and, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not enough of the and. Anyways, so I had a lot of these experiences and I realized in my pursuit of trying to be a steward of the employee's experience in the workplace, I was completely drained. I was completely burnt out. And I decided it was time for me to branch out and do my own thing. And
Mm.
different ebbs and flows, right? For me, where I I decided to create measured leadership with a friend and a partner, and we decided like let's create measured leadership and see what happens, right? And I did it, and then I was like, you know what? Life's bringing different things to me. A house, potential child, right? So I was like, I got to go find that 9 to 5 again. Like I can't just jump into the world of 1099s and doing invoices on QuickBooks and whatever else, right? And so I went back and forth, but eventually the universe has a way of guiding you back to where you should be, right? And I've been thinking about this idea of like I am where I should be in my life,
Yeah.
right? And not thinking about like I should be there or I should be here or I made this mistake. I'm no, like I am exactly where I should be at 10:41 a.m. Eastern time on January 2nd, talking
Yeah.
to Michael and sharing this, right? Like the way that everything happened has built me up to this particular moment. And rather than trying to think about like I should do this, I should do that, you know what? I shouldn't do this or I couldn't, stop the could, woulds, and should. This is what I'm doing, right? And I'm focused on where I'm at now,
Yeah.
right?
That makes
And
sense.
focused
Yeah.
on what I'm going to be doing in the future, right? And part of it is having conversations like this, right? Like to me,
Yeah.
which are extremely valuable. So, all that to say, my corporate experiences led me to want to create measured leadership because I think there's a way to support the workplace by supporting leaders, by supporting teams. And I have the hashtag that I often use is hashtag work better, live better, because I can't help but believe that our qualitative life experience is so determined by the work that we're doing. So if we can shift how we work slightly better each and every day or each and every year, qualitatively the way we live our lives can be better. And
Yeah.
to me, that's a some may call it aspirational, some may call it Pollyanna. I don't really care, right? Like to me, it's like why not have this aspiration? And if I can only achieve it slightly, then what an amazing feat that would be, right? To me, that's like I'm filled with joy at the idea of I can make somebody's life better because I've helped them make their work life better.
Yeah, it makes sense.
To me, that's
What
awesome.
when you decided to go back to school, after that customer service job, and you're like, "Hey, I don't want to be complaining about my workplace for the
Yeah.
next 40 something years, 50 something years." Uh, what made you decide to study what you did? And did you go back and get into focusing on organizations, and teams? Like, what made you decide that versus studying finance or something else, studying something else? Yeah.
Yeah, no, great question. So, a lot of it was just personal reflection around who am I as a person and what do I enjoy doing. Um, what I didn't share in that story so far is that I had enrolled in another master's program doing finance,
Oh.
and I hated it.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's not who I am,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not my angle. And that was and I did that because I saw the community around me, a lot of my friends and peers, they were all doing finance and
Yeah.
accounting, and they were all making good money, they're getting good jobs, and I felt like I was floundering. Hindsight will tell me differently, but in the moment, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, like I can't help but compare, so I got to do something different. And so I enrolled in a master's program, and I realized it wasn't for me because that's not the person who I am, and it doesn't play to the strengths that I have to offer, right?
Yeah.
Which is different than the idea of like, could I have done that program and could I have worked in the world of finance and accounting? That answer is abundantly yes. But would I have been happy? Would my gifts have naturally been able to come out in that space? Probably not. It would have been a major struggle, right? And I actually feel relatively fortunate that I was able to get into that program, take one class, and then feel the tension of like, do I want my life to be this way for the next X amount of years, right? Am I going to invest myself in education so that my life can continue to be a whole lot of complaining about like what I'm feeling? And I was like, no, I can't do that. And so I actually read this book called Primitive Leadership.
Hmm.
And it's a lot about emotional intelligence. And that book was the impetus that led me to want to go to grad school. Grad school was mostly based upon proximity to where I grew up. So, Teachers College, Columbia is obviously in New York City, and I applied to all the programs, kind of in the general area of where I grew up, and they happen to be also like fantastic programs, right? Like Baruch has a really strong program. Columbia has a great program. NYU has a good program. Rutgers has a good program. And I applied to all four. And I thought at that point in my life, I was very insecure about like my intellect at that point. I was hoping that I would get into one of the four. And I was like, if I get into just one, it makes my life easy because then the universe told me then go to this one. The other three said no. Turns out I got into all four and I was like, oh my gosh, like now what? Like now I have to like make a decision and take responsibility. Like, come on. And I just ended up really liking the curriculum. Even you can hear it in the name of the program. It's a social organizational versus a typical industrial organizational or a
Yeah.
labor focus. And so I really appreciated the curriculum. And the other thing I did is before I made that decision to go to any school, I went to each campus
Yeah.
and I quietly just walked around campus by myself to see what it would feel like, right? Like, what's the qualitative experience that I'm feeling and going through right now on that campus? And so you could see my son decided to join us. So I'm just let him say hi, so
Hey there, buddy. How are you?
he can get
How
this
you
out of his
doing, buddy?
system.
This
I
first
mean, what?
his first live show. There you go.
Yeah. Right?
보여줘. 저거
Okay.
보여줘.
Okay.
책 보여줘.
Okay, bye-bye.
책 보여줘. 책 보여줘.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. Hey, life happens, right? So yeah, so I think it was really, really great for you to share the intentionality you had around making your decision post that customer service role, and really thinking about what am I making a decision that's going to make me happy, that I'm
Right.
going to live the life that I feel like I was made to live, versus doing the thing that society expects me to do, whether it's become a finance pro, join Wall Street, do the thing that my friends are doing, fulfill the expectation that my parents have for me, whatever it is. I think being intentional about that, and that's not most people's experience. Most people's experience is they kind of react to whatever is given to them or whatever they run across, or they react to expectations and then they make decisions based on expectations versus is this the intentionally thinking, is this the right decision right now for this decision for my life? And so I think it's great for you to it was great for you to share that, how intentional you were in those decisions, because it's pretty rare, even in your late teens and 20s. It's very rare for people to make decisions like that. It's very hard, and it requires a little bit of faith, trust. Also saying, "Hey, look, I could make the wrong decision easily.
Yeah.
I could instead of hey, let's just go the safe route and go the route that a lot of my peers are going, which is finance, accounting, and going to Wall Street, whatever it is, to make a lot of money." Yeah. Which statistically, if you do that, you're probably going to make a lot of money, right?
It's a safe decision to make, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that kind of became clear to me in those moments was this idea that the path, career-wise or even just personally, that we feel like we should be taking is arbitrary, right? Like, who created this idea of this timeline of my career trajectory or a family path, right? Like, who said that I had to be a certain age when these things happen? And I keep coming around this question of like, what am I going to do when I grow up, right? and I'm okay with that, right? Like, I want to approach things continually with the level of curiosity, because I think that's healthy, right? Like, if my son has taught me anything, it's like he approaches everything with so much wonder, and I think that's something that I can learn from, right? Like, versus approaching him with this idea of like, I know everything, right? Which is no fun in personal life or professional life. 1 second, I'm sorry.
Yeah. As Ed focuses on his son and making sure his son's okay, we're going to continue this conversation. I'll continue this conversation, and while we try to get Ed back, but I loved hearing that intentionality. Most of us are very focused on reacting to decisions, in our lives, and so Ed, everything okay on your end?
It is. He just loves
time with you.
And if I'm on camera and he can see himself, he thinks this is the coolest thing. So
every kid is fascinated by, obviously, it's really, really interesting, because this is probably not something that was common, obviously, when you and I were growing up. It wasn't common that our parents were on video or doing doing much online, and then coming and seeing them on video and thinking, what's going on here? I see my face constantly being streamed. So just really, really interesting. Yeah. How about I go let you take care of your son? I'll chat for a little bit while you're doing that. Okay. So Ed was sharing that the intentionality that he had around decisions, especially post-college, and then obviously post his first job after college, led him into helping organizations and leading the way, that making decisions of the path he wanted for his career, which is very rare. We're very rare to be intentional about that. It's very rare to see people make intentional decisions around that, because most of us are living kind of decision by decision based on reaction, and it's hard to sit and be intentional about that. So one of the things I encourage you to do for this new year is to take the time, whether today or this week, to actually think through intentionally, what do you want 2024 to be about? Hey, welcome back, Ed. Hey, life happens.
Twice in 20 minutes now. Yeah.
So why don't we jump into you mentioned launching Measured Leadership. So after your program, did you launch Measured Leadership right away, or did you go work like in an HR somewhere? And what were you doing? And then what caused you to launch Measured Leadership?
Yeah. So I graduated. I'll essentially be dating myself here, but I graduated 2009,
Yeah.
And if we remember back, there's the financial crisis pretty much like crippled a lot of hiring. And so I finished up with my master's. I think I'm about to go get a nice job and start like developing my career and whatnot. Nothing. Goose eggs.
Wow, that's tough.
I intentionally saved all the job applications because I wanted to remind myself all the time, and I have it in my Gmail folder. I wanted to remind myself like how challenging that time was, and that even if it was challenging, that I can get through it. Right? Because sometimes we get so stuck in the challenge, and it kind of cripples us from time to time. And I want to remind myself that I could do hard things and I could get through, and that I have done hard things, right? But I worked. I think from when I graduated, I think it took almost 2 years until I found a full-time job in 2011. And in between then, I did anything and everything, right? And I kind of really developed this idea of hustling. And I was doing anything from landscaping, right, to painting, to I was doing Uber before people were doing Uber. I did construction, right? I would work with these Korean contractors, and I would meet them at 6 a.m. somewhere and have a 12-hour shift more or less. And the deal was they would give me $100 in cash, some beers, and some cigarettes, right? Right. And it was kind of, if I think about it now, I'm like, wow, like
You're like, wild. I
that's
can't believe I did
wild.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Like
wild. Yeah.
like how did I even get connected to that, right? But you know, you do things because you need to do things. And I always thought that doing stuff was better than just sitting on my butt
Yeah.
looking at like different, job aggregation sites and constantly going through that. So I wanted to devote at least a few days where I was out and about and active and doing something. And I also had, practical responsibilities like paying off my loans, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so there was things I needed to do to work. And so I did that for literally about a year and a half, almost 2 years before I found my first job, which was in recruiting. And then I was in corporate recruiting for about 2 years before life and marriage moved me up to New Hampshire. And, I was able to plug in there at a health system up there and start doing some work that, for the first time doing work that I actually really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Got intimately involved in kind of developing and working on a performance management program for an organization. Started to, get into more leadership stuff, started to do more coaching stuff. And that's really where things began to blossom for me on a professional level. And at the same time, I realized while I was up there that that I need to advocate for my own worth, and that nobody was going to do that for me. Right.
Yeah.
And figuring out like, what's my voice in the workplace? What's my voice in general? How have I learned to be quiet? How have I learned to shrink? And in the process, like, instead of blaming, which was easy to do, how do I take responsibility for my career? And as these things started to intersect in my own personal development, that's when measured leadership came out, because I began to realize in the place where I was living in New Hampshire, on the border of New Hampshire and Vermont, we didn't have enough employers for me to kind of play the market.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like I was in New Jersey or New York where I could just, easily or more easily kind of navigate different job situations. There, I didn't have that option. And so I figured, instead of trying to spin my wheels and try to fit the targets that everybody else places on me, let's create my own target and start going forward based upon my know-how, my experience, my knowledge, in conjunction with my co-founder. And so we started working together and started doing that. And that's kind of where it started. And like I said earlier, right, I did that for a few years, and then the pressures of wanting to have the biweekly paychecks or whatnot started to happen, because life started to bring on different things, and COVID happened, and there was just different concerns. And so eventually did go back into the full-time job market for a little bit. But, after I did that, different circumstances, the birth of my son being a very big one, led me to, get clarity around, like, I really do want to do this thing for myself, because it gives me the flexibility to literally work better to live better, right? Like I've been able to witness different experiences with my son that otherwise I would not have. And I know I gave up a substantial amount of income to do that. And at the same time, it's all been worth it. And I know that what I'm building with measured leadership is going to recoup income moving forward in my life. And so and again, you talked about like taking a leap of faith. Am I taking a bit of a leap of faith? Probably I am.
Oh yeah.
But I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Well, it's a leap of faith regardless. It's either a leap of faith in the job, the employer they're going to go work for, or it's a leap of faith in yourself as a leader running your own organization. There is a leap of faith on either side. And so some say, well, they use the word stability. I want stability or whatever it is. Like, well, that word really, it depends on how you look at it of what is stability. Yes, obviously going to an organization that's large, has been around for a long time, has shown and proven over many years to employ people and continue to pay paychecks. That's some level of stability, I guess,
Sure.
right? But we also see large organizations like that fall apart and go out of business and change directions and lay people off. And so you described entering the job market in 2009 and looking for 2.5 years for your first role. That was a common experience for many people back in 2008, 2009 when the recession was happening. And what I love is that you didn't have too much embarrassment or shame to have to go and just work and do the things you needed to do to pay bills, to make rent. I think so many people in the workforce, even people who they've reached in their minds, a certain level of their profession, have too much embarrassment or shame to go, well, I'm too good to go drive Uber, or I'm too good to go work construction. I'm too good to go to Starbucks part-time. I'm too good to work at Target. Whatever it is you need to do to put food on the table, to pay your bills. There's too many people with I guess just too thoughts of they think too highly of themselves to go and to think I'm better than that. I'm going, well, no, you're not better than that. That by definition, then the people or persons working those jobs are below you, right? And they're not. They're just like you and me, right? And 100%. The way I look at it is, the guy that I walk into Walmart and the person greeting me could have a very similar story as me. They're just at a different stage in their life right now. they could be, or they could be right out of college waiting for that next full-time dream job. But right now they need to pay their bills, or that the Uber driver that's driving me to the airport, they could be a business owner and their business just having a down cycle, and they're doing what they need to do to not extract money from their business right now. They're just making extra money on the side. So there's a lot of, we just don't know that story.
We don't know.
Yeah. And I think it shows a lot that you're willing to do what it takes, which then you could say, hey, if I'm willing to do that, I'm willing to make a bet on myself right now. I'm willing to make a bet on myself when the safer bet is necessary, quote unquote safer bet is going somewhere with high income, more stability, a big role, whatever that is.
Yeah. No, and you said it earlier, right? But stability is defined differently based on each one of us, right? And so I'm referring to financial stability when I talked about it, right? But what's the cost to financial stability?
Yeah.
Right. And am I sure that the quality of life is going to be what I want? Am I sure about my manager and that leadership relationship that I'm going to have with that person? Am I sure about my own development and growth path? Right? Am I sure about these things? Am I sure about my own mental and emotional health in that employment situation? Right? And these are all other things that we have to think about. And we often, and I understand why we often only solely look at the financial and the benefits pieces, because those are, you can sink your teeth into that, right? Like those are very tangible. And so, but I think you're 100% right. And, as we, I would encourage the audience listening, start to define these words in your own way, in a way that makes sense for your own life. And that's kind of what I've done, right? Like I think about like work, and I, for so long, was stuck in this fixed mindset of like, it has to be a 9 to 5. It has to be an employer that somebody pays me. And it wasn't until, and I'm still going through my transformation now about like, I am my own work,
Yeah.
right? Like I am growing my brand, who I am, and sharing it and working with other people in coaching relationships and facilitations and speaking roles and in consulting to figure out how do we get this workplace to be better, right? And I'm doing that, and that doesn't look like a 9 to 5. It looks like my son coming in and out sometimes, right? Like that's what it looks like though, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's what life looks like for so many of us, right? In our
Yeah.
own ways. It doesn't look the way we think it's traditionally looked. And there's nothing that's normal. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so this is kind of what I'm doing, and I'm appreciative that you were so gracious when he came running in, because there's still a part of me that's like has muscle memory about like, oh my gosh, if my kid interrupts a meeting or something, like what is that, how does that look about me and my professionalism
Right.
and all these different things. We just brushed it off and we moved on,
Yeah.
and we knew that it was going to be okay, right? Like that alone shows a progression in the way so many of us are thinking and doing work, right? And so I thank you, Michael, for
Yeah, of
that,
course.
because it kind of like reaffirmed that in me in like a very live moment, right? And
Yeah.
which is really cool for me.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. So yeah, so why don't we dive into, tell us about measured leadership. What
Yeah.
what does measured leadership do? What's the focus of measured leadership? Who's generally the customer that you're serving?
So, an academic way would be we are an organizational development consultancy. What the heck does that mean, though? At the end of the day, everything measured leadership does is tailored around making work not suck. And that's a line that I kind of borrowed from Adam Grant, professor over at Wharton Business School. But that's everything we do is geared towards that. The one-on-one executive leadership coaching is geared towards that. And I actively will coach leaders because leaders have such a disproportional impact on the people that they lead.
Hmm.
Right? I don't exclude leaders by behavior, right? Like leaders are not just positional. There are people in the workplace that are leaders because of the way they behave, the way they act, and the fact that they have influence on a lot of other people, even if their role and their title doesn't say so, right? And so I am open to coaching and working with leaders, all different leaders, right? And I think to me that's who I want to work with is people who influence other people, whether it be a formal or informal way. I also do facilitations, whether they be kind of more of your traditional trainings. I've been doing a lot of the stuff remote, but I would be lying to say that I'm not itching to do more things in person, just because the energy.
Oh
I'm telling
yeah,
you, the
it's different.
energy
It's
feels.
different.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
I did one a few months ago, and the energy I felt was unbelievable. It wasn't until I was driving home and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm wiped," because I had given so much
Yeah.
energy in that moment, and I hadn't done that like that, and not in that specific way in so long. And so, so we do facilitations, your trainings. I'm wanting to do more group coaching engagements, and I have a few group coaching programs that are launching. One later this month and one early February.
Okay.
And so I think group coaching is a really cool thing. I think it creates more access, and it also allows for participants to create connection with each other, right?
Yeah.
Versus just connecting with one-on-one is great. Connecting with other peers who are in the workplace or living their lives, who are experiencing similar things in life or similar feelings, but in their own unique way, to kind of create that like open sourced way of coaching each other and working through things like that, to
Yeah.
me is awesome. And in the process, making wonderful connections with actual people, right?
Yeah.
To me, there's something really cool about that. So that's something that I've been trying to kind of do more of intentionally this upcoming year. And again, I hope I can share I can share the links to some of these programs after
Yeah. That's great.
Reconciled
Yeah.
Live
No.
is
And
over.
I think group coaching, peer coaching is a very powerful. I've been part of Vistage for over 9 years. which is
Nice.
the group coaching organization I've been a part of since 2014, basically summer 2014 when I joined them. So it is very powerful to having, and I agree with you. In-person connection right now is sorely missed by many people and is underrated.
Yeah.
And the fact is that now with the little in-person interaction that many of us have, I think we can take advantage of it and also really look at really be intentional about the energy that we want to give and also receive from it as well. So I think that's really related. So if I'm an organization, I'm
Yeah.
I'm a large hospital, I am a university, I'm a big employer, or even I'm a small business.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that I'm coming to hire you to do? Is it, hey Ed, my team is not performing well. I need you to boost them, or what is it
Mm-hmm.
exactly that I'm
Yeah.
coming to you and saying, hey, I need your help with training on?
Yeah. So, when we hire people, we don't hire duds. We hire people because we think they're fantastic. Sometimes when they get into an organization, though, they feel stuck, right? Or you have a team of all these brilliant people, and you might be leading that team, and you might be wondering to yourself, like, why aren't they producing? Why aren't they collaborating? There's something missing here, right? I don't get how so many smart and fantastic people aren't meshing, right? That's when that's that's the situation that I love to come in and work with. I want to understand what's going on with that team. I want to understand what are the expectations, what are the assumptions that are not being communicated, but that are floating around the space that's now getting in the way. I want to understand what's the story that's going on in everyone's mind about what's happening here. That's just a story. That's not reality. But that story that we tell ourselves is powerful enough to absolutely get us stuck and absolutely to get the team stuck. And when that story goes unshared and isn't calibrated to reality, that story has the potential to really, really, really hurt not just performance, but the organizational culture of of a group, of a team, of an organization. Like culture, literally culture can be broken because of the story that we tell in our minds that we never actually share to the world, but operates up here and then dictates how we behave. And then confirmation bias only confirms what we think, but we never talk about, right? And so I work with teams and I work with individuals to help them get unstuck so that they can begin to align. What's your intention? Is that aligning to the actual impact you are having? And so that's the sweet spot that I want to work with. How we do that work probably will look different, each individual, each group, because there's no cookie cutter solution, right? We're humans. We're far too complicated for cookie cutter, one size fits all. I will talk with each group that I work with to better understand what they're going through, what's happened in the past. Like I want to know what's happened in the past because all of that helps inform that story.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I don't keep that in mind, it harms me in terms of how I'm able to do my work. And so I want to be curious. I want to try to understand. And like I said earlier, right? Like my son teaches me every day. When I think I know, it's really not a great place to be, right? And that when I work with my clients, I intentionally do my best to approach from a place of curiosity because if I don't want to think I know, because that's when I will provide that cookie cutter solution that usually is not what they're looking for.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, are you using like all customized training that you've created, or are you leveraging any tools that kind of exist on the market out there to help you with the training process?
So I use two mostly. One is Everything Disc, and that's the one I used with Reconciled's team a few times.
Yeah.
That I think worked really well.
Oh yeah.
Help create understanding, help create self-awareness, help create kind of more synergies around how we work with one another, how we communicate. how we listen,
Yeah.
right? So that's one that I use. And the other one I use is the intercultural development inventory, which is geared around how do we help people move from a mindset where we're monocultural? I only know my lens. All right. I see the world through only my lens, to
Yeah.
one that's more multicultural. So I not only see through my lens, but I can understand through Michael's lens. I can understand, not just through HR's lens, but I can understand through marketing's lens. I can understand through sales' lens. I can understand through finances' lens, right? Where we can begin to understand the similarities and differences that we operate with and leverage these things to do good work, not to allow us to create barriers all the time. When we think about, I use it oftentimes with organizations trying to promote and work around their DEI initiatives. And so when we think about diversity, to get to inclusion requires a lot, right? So I think the tool that I'm talking about, the Intercultural Development Inventory, IDI for short, that's a tool to help bridge, because that helps create the mindset. As we create the mindset of not just me, but us, not just my experience, but your experience, not my similarities, but beginning to understand and the two-way of similarities and differences that could exist between us, and then to work with it. That muscle, the IDI helps bridge from diversity towards inclusion, right? And so that's another one that's not my own content, but one that I've leveraged. Both of those groups that kind of own those programs are fantastic. I've worked with them for years. I facilitated these trainings for years, used them in coaching for years, and those are the two that I work predominantly with. There's another one that I recently partnered with called Deeper Signals, and that I'm in the midst of getting certified in it. They do both a kind of more of your Big Five personality test, and then they also do one around motivation and strengths. And so, but that is one I'm not going to speak too much on, because I don't want to say the wrong thing. But I'm getting certified in that as we speak right now.
That's great.
So yeah, and I'm super excited to use it. And one of the draws I'll share about them is that they are, quote, HR tech that has really been thoughtful about the user experience first, instead of thinking about how do we create the right platform internally for HR tech and then enforce HR folks to follow the processes that we've created. Instead, they've understood the processes that the business processes that people use and do, and they've tried to tailor their tech and their platforms to that end. So I've appreciated that, as they kind of have shown me their platform and kind of talked me through a lot of things. And there's somebody that I'm going to be partnering with, and I'm like beyond excited to work with them and to begin to use some of their assessments. And I haven't used them yet. And so if anyone listening wants to work with me around that and kind of please reach out. Like let's give it a whirl, right? Let's go for it. So yeah, I'm so excited to use it.
Yeah. Is Measure Leadership now you and your co-founder still, or kind of what's the team makeup look like right now?
Mostly me. Yeah. I am hoping and I am wanting to build enough business to be able to reach out to subcontractors to help me do facilitations, to do coaching. Yeah. I want to do group coaching programs, more group coaching programs. Yeah. I think there's one group coaching program that I'm doing around change that is a take on change that I haven't seen in the marketplace these days. And I intentionally wanted to run this group program because change is something that we all experience. Organizations go through change all the time. And, we think about John Cotter's, his 8 steps and all these other models of change. But the piece of change that oftentimes doesn't get talked about is that the reality is change is external. Change happens outside of us. And so as that happens, how are we leading ourselves internally? So let me give an example. The day that I graduated college, I moved from being a student to a professional.
Mm.
That happened externally. The identity shift that happened internally took a very long time for me to embrace. I was working day to day, but I kept on trying to go back to campus. I kept on wanting to go to campus on the weekends, right? Because there was an internal transition that I didn't give up yet. I was still holding on to that, right? And we see this all the time when people move from organization to organization, or when people go from one manager to another manager. There's an external change that just happened. But how are you internally transitioning? How are you letting go of certain things? How are you welcoming certain new things? How are you unlearning certain things? How are you relearning other things, right? Like, and how are you thinking about yourself? Like, literally, your identity might be changing in this moment a little bit. And we're not oftentimes taking any intentionality to how we're leading ourselves and others through that transition, right? And this happens even with like technology, right? You change technology in a company, and then there's somebody who used to be the subject matter expert in that technology. Guess what? Tomorrow, when we press the go live for the new one, you're not subject matter expert. You're novice, just like everybody else. That's an identity shift in the professional space. How are we helping our people through that identity shift so they feel more secure and confident to actually work with the change that's happening instead of resisting? Resistance is awful for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And yet I'm sure you've experienced it. And by the way, I've done the resisting. Right? I've been the one doing the resisting
we
too.
all have,
Right.
yeah.
But that hasn't helped me. Right? And I'm a big proponent at this point in my life to really support people in understanding that there's an internal aspect of change that we need to focus on so that we can adapt to what's happening externally. And I think that will then help us when we use the Cotters and all these other models of change. It just amplifies our ability. It's like WD-40, right? You spray the WD-40,
Yeah.
now things begin to run smoothly. That's the importance of focusing on the internal piece around change. And again, like this is something that I'm working on. And if I'm able to, and I'm really crossing my fingers for this upcoming year, not just this upcoming year, but just the trajectory moving forward to do more of these groups. And as we can get more groups set up, I'd love to, to come back to your initial question, I'd love to then hire contractors to work with me. And, we call them contractors on paper, right? But really it's people want to partner with me.
Yeah.
Because on some level that they believe this whole idea of work better, live better, right?
Yeah.
And that we can work with people to make this more of a reality, right? People who want to do that, those are the people I want to partner with, and I want to work with and collaborate with and share ideas with. Like, that's my sweet spot.
That's great. That's great. Well, Ed, as we come near the end of our show, as most people, as they start off this year, and really at any time when on any day, there's a lot of people, but especially at the beginning of the new year, they're thinking about goal setting. They're thinking about their goals for the year, what they want to accomplish this year. When you think about all the trainings that you provide, your experience so far doing this with a lot of organizations, what are some nuggets that you want to leave the audience with as we end our time together? What are some nuggets when they think about this goal setting? They think about the rest of this new year. What kind of nuggets can you share about that would help them in this process?
So I think one thing is think about goals as intentions, right? When I think about a goal, it's very specific. Partially because everyone's been kind of taught the SMART model, which is great, by the way.
Yeah.
But it gives us a frame of mind that we have to have this specific thing in mind, and if we don't hit that, we failed. Right? And so versus when I think about intention, it's a direction. And if I have an intention of wanting to be a successful business, there's many things that move me in that direction. That, I think, has helped me identify actions to take that support my intention. Right? And so when we think about more traditional goals, the actions I take probably in and of itself can be the goals, right? And really what I'm doing is kind of reverse engineering. I'm thinking about I'm thinking about what's this ideal state dream spot, and whether I actually hit that one day or don't, that is less important. What I think is more important is for yourselves. What do you want? What do you want to achieve? What does the business need you to achieve and support? Think about that from an idealistic standpoint, and then begin to ask yourself, what are the relationships I need to build now to get to that end? What are the skill sets I need to build now to get to that end? What are the projects and achievements I need to accomplish to get to that end? What are the mindsets that I need to foster to get to that end? Because it's all of those things, right? Like, it's not just, am I good enough to do that what's going to get me to that end? You have to have the mindset. You have to have the relationship. All of these pieces together get you to that end, and get you to that end in a way that's healthy and sustainable. I'm kind of convinced that all of us can do an amazing thing once. I don't know what the value is in doing it just once, though. I see it and I go, don't we want to keep doing it and repeating it?
Yeah.
If you want to repeat it, you can't be prescriptive in it. You have to build the muscles that can support it and allow you and your team to be able to do it as the environment shifts, because guess what? The environment always shifts.
Yeah.
Right. And so, that's where the mindset, that's where the relationships become so important. Not just focusing on the what I need to do, but those other pieces around it are super important.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Ed. Yeah, that was really great. Thanks for sharing that. And I love that. And really focusing on intention, but also focusing on the things that the things I need to focus on in order to get to accomplish those things, and it allows me then to act in faith, to step out forward and go, okay, let's do this. And I think most amazing things that are done are decisions or goals that, if you don't get the support of other people around you, it's just not going to happen. Right. Not to only focus on things you go, oh yeah, I know for 100% certain I'm going to be able to accomplish this. Well, that wasn't very hard. Right. If hey, look, if these 3 or 4 things don't fall into place, it's just not going to happen. And so I'm going to step out in faith and work on going after those. So I think that's awesome. Right. Well, yeah. Awesome. Ed, thank you for sharing. How do people find you? Where can people look you up easily if they want to reach out to you?
You could LinkedIn is a great place. I'm relatively active on LinkedIn. If you look up Edward Kim, I should be there with no facial hair though. If you look up www.measuredleadership.com, that's my business website. If you want to email me, edward@measuredleadership.com. That's my email address. Those are probably the top 3 ways to reach out to me. If you do reach out to me, I will get back to you relatively quickly. Because I'm on devices and whatnot, and it's important, right? That's the customer service in me, by the way, right? Like I don't like people, I don't like to keep people hanging, because that was instilled in me at a young professional age. But I would be more than happy to connect with people and to talk and discuss ways that we can collaborate and potentially that we can support your organization.
That's awesome. Yeah, we worked, Reconciled and myself, we've worked with Ed on multiple occasions, and we've really enjoyed the product and the service that Ed's provided. So big endorsement from us. And if you want to work with Ed, feel free to reach out. But again, thanks for everybody for joining. Happy New Year to everybody. I hope 2024 is the best year you've ever had. And I hope that for every new year as it comes, that it's the best year that you ever have. And I think it can be, and with some intention, with some focus, and with some stepping out of faith, I really believe it can be. So thanks, Ed, again. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we will